Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 155 of So What's Been Happening. Tonight, it is the 1st of October. It's a Tuesday, and we're starting to call this Tune In Tuesday, which in this case is our first Tuesday of the month, ideally, where we're going to chat a little bit about mental health. We're going to have a special guest where possible. Or otherwise, we're just going to bring the boys on for a chat and see kind of a bit of a chance to tune up and check in on kind of where we're up to. So it's great to reflect on a story. This young man, Mark Sinton, joined us on episode 116 of So What's Been Happening, which wasn't too long ago. And we got to understand a lot about his music journey, which was great. But this time, it's a little bit more than that. We dig a little bit deeper and we talk about the incredible journey that Mark's been on in relation to his mental health journey as well, which has been a struggle like it is for a lot of people. Let's see if it continues to be a struggle in some people's life. I'm sure it is. Please understand that we're not mental health experts. So I just want to throw that out there. This is literally a path that we set up to talk about mental health, just to try and understand that and normalize these discussions, which is the most important part. So I do just kind of want to bring up this chat in almost all seriousness, that if it does trigger anything with yourself, please be aware that this is not a crisis support group or service. If you are really struggling or feeling that you are, please call the relevant bodies like Lifeline 131114 or in worst case 000. The main purpose of this chat is to learn and more about mental well-being, to share resources and to network. That's the important part about tonight. So I want to get a little bit serious on that. It can be sometimes come across quite flippantly from people when they just advertise that's chatting about mental health, but incredibly important. So tonight we are going to talk to Mark Sinton. But before we do, who's Mark Sinton? In case you didn't come on episode 116 and have to check that out later. This is a little clip we prepared earlier. This is a song called Some Other Place.
3, 4. The last time I saw you look that way feels like yesterday. Then it hits the ground and shatters like a glass. Some other day, I think it was some other day, when flakes of snow were laying on the ground. We got away, yes, we got away to drown out all our past, to some other place, to some other place. Touch me, I need to feel it's real. There comes a time when man must look inside to learn his worth. Everything will fade away. Everything will fade away if you don't keep it close. You called my name, I heard you there.
beautiful little segue into this chat. That's a ripper. That has been previously unreleased as far as out on vinyl, I believe. So, Marky Sinton, make sure that one is on the next hit list. All right, let's bring him up for a chat. Mr. Mark Sinton, welcome back to So What's Been Happening?
Good evening, Aaron, and thank you so much for having me on again. I think obviously coming on in a different sort of forum, chatting about mental health. And when you'd asked me if I was interested in doing this, I absolutely jumped at the chance to share my story, because the one thing that I have learned is that if we can share our stories, there's a fair chance that we can help each other out. And I've certainly, over my journey of dealing with mental health problems or issues, I find great solace and great learning from listening to other people's stories. So thank you again for giving me this forum, and I hope someone gets something out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. This, as we know, this sits in behind the scenes, both an audio and a video version, reaches people in different forms. We have a great connection with some people online already, listening in from all parts of the world, which is fantastic right now, Mark. So don't let that overwhelm you, of course, but it's nice to feel comfortable that friends and so many people did hit the like button and shared this and wanted to jump on and have this chat. So it just shows what these people mean to you, and you mean to them, most importantly too, Mark. So let's start by feeling comfortable in this space that we get to chat about mental health and your experience tonight.
Sure. Well, I guess really what you asked me to do was perhaps share my story. And I think you called this segment mental meltdown. And that sort of got me thinking about the couple of incidents in my life where I've had mental meltdowns, for want of, and we're not being flippant with that sort of label. So my story really, I don't think is anything out of the ordinary. It's not a spectacular story. It doesn't have any tragedy in it, etc. But it is my story. And it really centered around two parts of my life. One being pre-panic attacks, pre-anxiety, this sort of difficult anxiety, and post-panic attacks and post-anxiety. And a lot of that probably would be coming, centering around me trying to make a career for myself in music. And it was something that I was predisposed because of, I guess, a personality type, where I always set myself very high standards. And probably that's another conversation and another form of why one might be like that. But nonetheless, it's something that probably put me in a position that I would be predisposed to probably having some sort of reasonably difficult anxiety to have to deal with throughout my life. And so really, when we put to let's call it pre-panic attacks or pre-first meltdown, or mental meltdown would be in the early noughties. I was living in London and I was pursuing a career in music. And I'll try to keep that story quite a abridged version, but essentially I'd moved to Australia in 1995 to join a band. We got a little bit of traction here. We ended up signing with Shock Records, and we went over to London. And the reason I'm telling you this, because I think it feeds into what caused the first meltdown. And that band, like I guess so many Australian bands that have moved overseas, or anyone's moved overseas, that kind of fell apart towards the end of 1999. And I was sort of left on a personal note that I thought, well, I've failed, and I must say that the term failure comes up a lot in this story, or the perception of what failure is to anyone in any walk of life. Mine at that point, and still is, I guess, certainly in the creative field is where I exist. And I dusted myself off and I started again, and I built up another band, and over there in London, and managed to get myself signed to a really great indie label over there. And things were looking pretty good. And but it was slow going, and of course the preconceived notion that we put on ourselves to what we need to do to succeed. There's a lot of dialogue around that. Whether am I too old? Am I talented enough? Do people really care? What am I doing to my family with pushing myself to these, I guess, limits to try to achieve a perceived goal? I think that speaks to anyone in any walk of life. You don't have to be a musician. You can be a policeman. You can be a policewoman, or you can be working in a factory, or you can be or a politician, whatever, But it was in my form as a musician, and we got to that point, and things were looking pretty good. There was a few trials and tribulations, but then we made that record. We moved on to another record company because that record company ran out of money. And I found myself in a position at that stage, if we just pause that timeline, where I started getting some pretty major anxiety was coming into my life, and I started getting panic attacks. Now, if anyone who's listening has ever had a panic attack, they're pretty unpleasant. It's fairly confronting that your body is sort of attacking itself through this mental turmoil that you're going through. And the first thing I do, and this is probably, if I talk about when I speak to people that have been through a similar situation, they all say the same thing, and particularly men, I might add. I go to the doctor and I say, well, you got to fix me. Well, of course, they're not going to fix you. So there's a realization that one had to make to go, well, this is a journey that I need to go on if I need to exercise some element of self-help to be able to get back to what I would have perceived as a previous normality. So I went through that process of both quite a lot of counseling, and I went through the medical route in terms of medicine, but that didn't really work for me in terms of medication. And I sought the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. I don't know if that's a term you're familiar with, Aaron, or the listeners or watchers here, but and I won't go into that because, as you preface at the start of the episode, we're not mental experts. We're just telling our story, and there are people that are well qualified to be able to assist in that instance. But CBT is something that was an absolute godsend and a lifeline to me, and something now that I still, over 20 years later, when this, started this episode, that I use on a daily basis. But I still haven't had, if you like, the mental meltdown yet, and that occurred when we secured my third record deal. Now, you have to understand at this point that everything to me, my measure of success was, I'm going to make a living as a musician. It's going to pay the rent, and I'm going to be in the front of Uncut magazine or Mojo magazine or whatever, and I'm going to be, and that is my worth as a songwriter and as a musician and as a person. So I placed all of my self-worth on achieving this goal. So really, and I can retrospectively look at that now over time, was a recipe for disaster, because I guess there's a little bit of naivety, and naivety when you're young, you go for it, and I guess you have to have that. And I also, I'm speaking to you, Aaron, at the age of 53. So at that time, I was in my late 20s. So I've been able to look at that in terms of the passing of time and the continuing use of the toolkit that I talked to you about offline, how I use this toolkit to help. So at that stage, really, we'd moved on to a good record deal, and we were making an album with a fantastic producer there in the UK, a guy that's worked with, I don't think I'll mention his name, but a guy that would work with R.E.M., Wilco, High Lamas, Adam Franklin from Swerve Driver, Robin Hitchcock. So who else? Stevie Winwood. So you're starting to understand the caliber of person that we were dealing with. So we made what I think was a fantastic record. The record was handed in to the record company. It went silent. So any musicians that are listening now know exactly what I mean, that have maybe been through that process. So that was when I had the mental meltdown, if you like, because I knew I had the wherewithal. I think I was maybe 32 at that time. I had the wherewithal to know that this wasn't good news, and that perhaps it was the beginning of the end for that chapter. And this had been, I guess, the third hit of trying to do this. So I was running out of energy, and I was running out of time, and moreover, I was getting the panic attacks and the anxiety was getting to the stage where at times it was unbearable. You know, it was really difficult to do simple things like go to the supermarket, or, you know. So I guess at that stage you're thinking, you're looking at a precipice of what's the next, you know, does it go into depression, or et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I don't want to speak to that too much.
Just at those points, Mark, what did you find was your kind of, what got you through the days then when those attacks kind of happened at such a young age without the tools? You know, kind of what did you turn, you know, recluse? You know, what was your
not at all. I guess that's a good question. I'd been working part-time as well, so I still had to work part-time, maybe 2 to 3 days a week. I wasn't able, even though there was income coming in from music, I wasn't able to sustain all of my income from it. So going to work, waking up in the morning, not being able to eat, not being able to really communicate with my now wife. I pointed that she's there, she's not. But when I went to work, it went away. I was able to compartmentalize that to a certain degree. Certainly there were episodes. So that assisted, but as soon as I left that arena and went back to, say, rehearsals with the band, or things like that, or preparing for, say, organizing a tour, etc., that was pretty difficult. So I guess a little bit of distraction would have been the order of the day, and quite frankly, alcohol was something that I lent on a lot, and that's not the answer. So that's probably what I did at that time. But also, Aaron, I did work hard at the cognitive behavioral therapy, and I did work other maybe alternative things like Reiki, meditation. So at an early stage, we're talking 2002, that was 2003 that time actually, I was trying to use those methods to help me through. And I'm also,
let's face it, around that time, it wasn't really an outspoken conversation that was common. So did you find any common people experiencing the same thing at the same time, or you felt like you were running this alone?
Yeah, to a certain degree, I did feel I was running it alone. Obviously, my wife was a remarkable support. My brother and my family. Yeah, I even found it difficult to talk to my family about it, because I didn't really want to burden them with it. To be frank.
That's definitely something we do exactly take on, that burden, internal burden.
Yeah, because you think, well, you're an adult, and again, I have to keep going back to this thing. There is a perception of what we try to do in life as success, and we are scared to fail. Or I'm speaking for myself. One is scared to fail, and the thought of failure can be mentally crippling to you if you come to the realization that you, and I say in inverted commas, fail. So that was the thing that was probably the overriding generator for a lot of that, you know. And that, so on one hand, it's causing you to have these panic attacks, and that's another story all by itself. And it's also causing you not to be able to reach out to people, because the last thing I would have wanted to do, to admit at that time, was I am not going to reach my goals, my career goals, to be able to pay the bills as a musician. So yeah, but to answer your question, I remember going into work. By the way, I'm an architect, so my what pays the rent now is again in that creative field, and it's probably bespoke as well. I guess you could say in the architecture world, I'm like in an indie band, so it's quite sort of design led and quite bespoke, more filmy. And I remember speaking to an architect in London who didn't come into work for a little bit, and he had sort of spoken to me, and I could see the mannerisms, and I just said to him, "Look, are you okay, mate?" And he sort of said that he'd been having panic attacks, and it was like suddenly I could tell him that I was having panic attacks. And I remember standing almost in the kitchen of the office in London, and we sort of looked at each other and went, "Oh my God, there's two of us," So that was a milestone that I actually had forgotten. So thank you for reminding me.
What was that feeling at that time like? Do you remember that kind of moment? It sounds like, we've touched on that to remind you of that.
Yeah.
Did that make a difference to feel to somewhat normalize it?
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Yeah, I think yes, it did. In short, yes, it did. It was heartening to know that there were other people going through it. But that said, I mean, if we talk to now about, and I will finish at the end of the sort of story about my musical career, because I think there's another thing that's really important as well, because there's a gap between then and where I've landed now. But I think from that point of view, it's really important to recognize. I used to call it an anxiety disorder. I used to say to myself, I have an anxiety disorder, but I don't say that anymore, because I think that is painting it in a negative light. I think I have anxiety, or I can be an anxious person, or I can be a sensitive person, or that's probably how I would frame it these days, because like when I went to the doctor that day, and she said to me, "This is not something we can fix. It's something that you have to deal with, something that you have to build resilience and have to build mechanisms to allow you to find your new." Do we say new normal? I don't know if we say new normal, because how I am now is my normal, So yeah, I think so going back to what you were saying about this colleague of mine, it was really good, and that was probably then starting to build those building blocks for now. A good day is to be able to not have a panic attack. And I might add, I haven't had a panic attack. Well, actually, probably a few weeks ago, I would have had the start of one, and that would have been the first one in maybe 15 years. So, it's always there.
Sure.
But I reckon I'm sort of I was going to put the Mo Salah of CBT, if you want to put a soccer reference in. I think I'm pretty good at it. Sometimes miss, but more often than not score,
Yep.
That's a terrible one I can think of.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to have some version of a bit of a rating system on yourself, and without being too harsh. I think it's very easy to be very harsh on ourselves, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, that expectation in the music career, firstly, of making it and having I suppose a defined time frame to really nail it, and then to have to build on it. And what's the second thing look like, or the second opportunity, and do I get a third or a fourth?
Or the fourth, or the fifth. That's
yeah.
right. And when do you
what
pick
makes
it?
what makes me go again, especially not as a solo artist, as a band, and get everyone else to buy into the same situation that isn't dealing with the same thing.
And that's it. And you've hit on a few things there. And again, my story is music centric, because that's what I know. But if you talk, if to get back to maybe the story where when I knew the record, I knew it was probably not going to pan out, but I felt that I still had to cling on and try to give it a shot. I finally said to my wife, because we were always going to move back to Melbourne, that was always the plan. And I'd said, this was 2004. The record had been released, or was just about to be released. We were setting ourselves up for a tour of America, Japan, Australasia, Europe. We were holding the UK as a separate territory, and this is probably it, but I'll not get into that. That's irrelevant. I said, go back to Melbourne, set up, and I foolishly thought that I could run the band from here, Melbourne, because we probably had 2 years of touring ahead of us. That's what the grand plan was. I went back to London to fly back to live there for about 4 months, because we had a heap of showcase gigs to do for the UK and Europe territory, which we held on to. We didn't sign off on that, but that's another story. As soon as I got onto the plane at Tullamarine Marine Airport and the plane took off, I knew it was the wrong thing. There was a defining moment in that when I just went, this is wrong. So on one hand, it was good because you'd said, well, this is not going to work. On the other hand, it was crushing. I flew back. I got off the long. Now, anyone that's done that long haul flight knows that it's a bit of it's not the most comfortable. So you get off at London. I then find my new apartment with a housemate that I hadn't met before. I put my stuff up. Now that was the lowest of the low, where I just felt the crushing weight of my expectations and knowing that it wasn't going to work. I immediately ordered a flight back to Northern Ireland and got on that flight all in the same as quickly as I could, and sort of bunkered away and got sort of family PLC for a few days. And again, that was me thinking, well, I've made the right decision in as much as I know where this is going to land, but I now have to face this. And it's almost like a fire sale of your mental state. You've just got to flick things off, and you go. So I had to go through that process of stayed on London for 4 months, and sure enough, the showcase gigs, nothing came of it. And within 3 months, we were dropped. The tour support was gone, and I came back to Melbourne at the end of 2004. But from there to here, there was a period where I couldn't call myself a musician. There was a period of internal self-loathing. There was a period of I felt I was an imposter in everything that I did, because I went back into working in architecture full time. So there's a lot of self-hate on that, because I went, well, how can I do that? I don't deserve to do that because I've tried to be a musician for so. So it just seemed to be this circular. It's almost like you were a hamster on a wheel, rotating round and round and round and round, with no sense of buoyancy in life.
So was the thought process then, you still wanted the musician component, but you kind of kept it pushed away and didn't go back to it? Was that the thought process there?
I felt that, because if we go back to what I talked about, my definition of, and this is a Gen X thing, I'm certain, that my perception of what I needed to be as a successful musician, and for the public or people to perceive me as a musician, would be to have a record deal, to be touring, to be be on the front of all of the top magazines or within them, and to be making a good living out of music. And the thing is, Aaron, it's not like, I probably sound a bit arrogant, it's not like I was a duffer. I'd been getting, there was a lot of, you're the next thing, you're the next thing, you're the next thing, you know. And this is from within the industry at that stage.
Yep.
And so you're hearing that as well. So
Yeah,
you're
it's
going,
not purely belief.
you're going,
right?
you're going, I can't be wrong here. What's going on?
Mm.
So as far as I was concerned, when we came back to Melbourne, I'd failed completely. I had failed completely. So I really stopped calling myself a musician. I tinkered about and I played a little bit and I set up a recording studio at home, but I really fell out of love with music, and I made a choice. I'll never forget this. I made a choice at that time. I said I can either go for attempt number 4 here in Australia, 33, and run the risk of failing again, or I can just put a pause on it. And when I'm ready to go back on my terms, and I've done it. When I'm ready to go back on my terms, it'll be a different landscape, and it may not happen. Then I'll face up when that comes, you know. And part of I reflect back on that now, and I realize that I was using, I guess, a CBT approach to it. I was cognitively going through and going, well, you know, what if you are in that scenario? Can you bear? Will the third meltdown be one that puts you off the precipice, you know? And I made a call, rightly or wrongly, and I think rightly, retrospectively, that's just it's not something that I could do anymore. But again, with that came, you're a failure, you're a failure, you're a failure, you're a failure, you know. So, and I'm sure many people would feel that, particularly, I guess, well, in any pursuit. I was going to say in the arts, but that's bull. In any field.
Yeah, I think, yeah, very true. In any field, to the point where you have a job, you pour your hard earned into it, you keep trying, you keep pushing, you think you can do it. Someone's telling you, yes, you can. Then there's the element of doubt kicks in. Yeah, some things don't go to plan, out of your control. The economy changes, COVID hits, you know, everything happens, right? We've seen it all.
Mate, absolutely. We're seeing it now in Australia, and it's tough times here in this country. It's really, really tough. And of course, we contextualize it because we're living in a rich country. You and I are sitting in probably a heated house with really fast internet, and we're able to have this chat. That's certainly not what's happening in other places of the world, as we know. So, but I guess it is all relative and contextual as well. We are all humans, and at some stage, every single one of us, Aaron, is going to feel anxiety. I'm certain of it. Some of us are more predisposed to it, and I do think that, and it's worked for me where I've built a toolkit, and I use CBT. Probably, I've got to be honest with you, almost every day of my life. Okay, and I have no doubt that at some stage in our lives, whether it's through a moment of trauma or a moment of loss or something like that, you will have to probably, you know, sit down and face those issues at some stage. And as I say to you, I'm not talking about depression where maybe chemically there's such an imbalance that it's just a different story. That's not what I'm speaking to. But I am speaking to a situation where it could fall into that darkness if it's not, if one doesn't address it. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So did you find any of those moments that helped you realize this is where I'm at, and try and either pull it up there or change the situation? What are some of those? Are we getting to that discussion in relation to the toolkit? What are some of those kind of components that you feel like you've added, I guess, to your armory to almost defend this?
Yeah, I think I don't know if you've heard of self-talk. I mean, I'm a shocker. I'm continually self-talking. I'm continually
possibly the toughest judge of all.
Yeah, quite. So, and I think that if you're acutely aware, and that's something that I have got a better handle on. If you're acutely aware when you are falling into bad habits, and those bad habits might be simply staying up too late. You might just stay up too late, man, you know? So I know that if I do that, my mental state falls away. I know that if I drink too much alcohol over a prolonged period, and I'm not talking about getting absolutely plastered, I'm talking about, 3-4 nights in a row, you're having a couple of beers, or you're having half a bottle of wine or whatever, that is not going to work well with my mental state. So you have to almost say to yourself, well, Mark, you're not going down, you're not spiraling. It's just that, your body is dehydrated. And when you're dehydrated, it exacerbates your anxiety. Okay. So that's a cognitive thinking that I wouldn't have had.
Yep.
And that thing where I was talking about where you just get pissed, just to sort of block out the voices. And I don't mean it like that. Sorry, voices, that's a bit crass. Block out the self-hate that would, that's not productive. So I guess understanding that, also understanding when you just need to, excuse me, maybe just be a miserable bastard for a few days.
Actually acknowledge that
and
that is part of it.
Say to your loved ones, I'm sorry. This is where I'm at. I recognize it. I'm owning it, and I'm doing my best to get out of it. And by the way, can I tell you about this? Can we have a chat about this? Can you? And another thing that I've learned as well, and this is something that from years and years of using this CBT, I sort of thought, well, I know everything. I know, and recognizing when I actually need to go and get a dose of professional help. I was speaking to a friend of mine who's in the music industry recently, and that person said that they were getting a new mental health program, and I was just saying, that's fantastic. That's really, really good. And so recognizing also when maybe you need to get a little bit of help. And does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Tapping into it a bit earlier before you start to spiral a little bit.
Yeah. So, understanding what some of those signs are, whether that's someone asking you, and it's like, why are they still asking me? I'm okay. I'm fine. What's that about? So other people know you better sometimes than you know yourself, especially those close to you.
Absolutely. And listening to them and trusting them. So that's one way of doing it as well. And also, to be honest, I've also embraced, one of my business partners said to me, Mark, your disposition and the way you see, because I can be a bit misanthropic, I might add. And he said, but the way you see things is your superpower. I'd never thought of it like that. I'd never had it framed like that before. He said, that's your superpower. That's how you write songs, the way you do. I don't think I don't think I wallow. I do think I have an ability to touch into a shared consciousness in my songwriting. This is starting, and I think there is no way that I would be able to write the songs that I write now if I hadn't been on the journey that I've been on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when you frame it that way, you sort of go, well, that's okay. That's good. So you're putting a layer of positivity on your disposition.
Yeah. And look, there's no doubt storytellers in general, whether that be through song or through any other form of arts, can tell some pretty deep and dark stories. Some self, through their journeys, and some stories that they've heard or experienced or seen in someone else. So, it's not just the music industry; it's part of life. But to some degree, is that part of the outpouring of emotion that you're able to do now? And does it kind of help as a tool at all? Like, I was told once to, to journal a little bit more and write your thoughts down. Yeah, to me, your thoughts are a little bit more in the songwriting phase now. Or do you use that as a tool?
I write poetry. Nothing published. Maybe I'll put it into the world at some stage. And my songwriting is essentially my songwriting is definitely I'm diarizing my life.
Yep.
I'll obviously try to do it in an obtuse way. I don't want to be, and hopefully people that have heard my music, the music that I'm releasing now, it's definitely diarizing my life, but in an obtuse way, so it wouldn't be as obvious. Yeah. So that helps me. And yeah, just writing poetry as well, just for my own, just because I like how words are put together. So I just do it for myself. I would love to be able to paint, but I'm too chicken shit. I'm compelled to be able to try to put something on paper like that because I think I could express. But yeah, I'm a bit. I haven't dipped my toe in that water yet. I'd like to try.
Well, we might make a few promises on this podcast tonight. Of it seems like an emotive time to maybe try something different as another tool. But yeah, drawing or painting, I definitely can see.
Yeah, maybe. Sure. Look, and again, I said to you, Aaron, and when we prefaced this chat, my story is a very, very ordinary story. Ordinary in the sense of a normal story. And in many ways, that probably makes it more relatable.
Sure.
It's not as a result of some sort of trauma. I think it's just a result of just probably my predisposition. It may be as a result in some ways of maybe some of my background, perhaps where I grew up, who knows. But anyway, yeah, but it's an ordinary story.
I think regardless, as a youngster, into your 20s, and the pressure is on after school days of what are you going to become? What are you? Especially in the arts of a musician. Like, so when are you going to get a real job? What else are you going to do? So typically you pick another career in the arts, which is as tough and competitive to make a point and a difference, and always striving for what are you judged on? You're judged on an award effectively, as a organization or as a designer. So yeah, it's one breeds another, I guess, but we are, like you said, Mark, we are a work in progress, and we've chatted about that a little bit as a bit of a topic on our mental health shows.
Yes, we are. That's right. I said there's a commonality in all of this, and it's just, I mean, sometimes, we can look at the society that we're finding ourselves in now. We are so mediatized. It's fast. It's flash. It's, wow factor, everywhere we look. And it's pretty bloody exhausting, to be frank.
That is.
I'm a man, am I middle-aged? My children are, maybe they don't know any different. This is what they know, but I would shudder to, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that the younger generations are really struggling with their mental health. Maybe they're more open about it than what we were.
Yep.
Well, definitely they're more open about it than we were. Absolutely. But yeah, there's so many factors that contribute to one's well-being,
Yeah, I mean, we've always got a fear for our own kids and other people's kids, that's for sure. Yeah, you've written a song about it. So it's a beautiful song too, I might admit, for your daughter. It's a beautiful track, but make sure you check that out, everyone. But yeah, I mean, what you've developed now, from your 20s into being an early 50s now, there's that milestone moments. We're judged by what's your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s look like. What's next? Do you find yourself have a different sense or understanding of what you call failure versus success, or what's your judgment on that now?
Absolutely. So if I can talk about, say, music, because I guess that's what started this chat. And this is a conversation that I have with a lot of, I mean, I'm quite involved in the Melbourne music scene now, and I've got to, over the last couple of years, to sort of pick up a lot of muso friends in the scene, which I'm very, very grateful for. And a lot of us are older, and we sit and we chat about it, and we talk about what is the measure of success now. And a lot of my peers in this sort of scene that we have all been on similar journeys to me, have all done the whole science thing, and maybe seen as the next big thing, if you like. So we have a shared history, and our method of success is now is we all agree is we're still doing it. We're still getting up. We're getting on stage. We're making records. This is our reality now. And we should be proud of the fact that we're doing that. We should probably give ourselves a pat on the back or a few props for actually doing that. Of course, there's the other voice in me saying, well, yeah, but you're not playing the form. But you're not, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. But that voice is getting quieter and quieter and quieter. So, I mean, that's primarily the major difference between, so redefining success and redefining failure. Now, I don't believe in failure. I don't believe in the word failure, because there's always, I always try to, if we talk about trying to find, don't look at the constraints, look at the opportunities, don't look at what you can't do, look what you can do. And that might be simply, what, today I'm going to go to the shop and I'm going to buy dinner, and I'm going to go home and going to cook it, and it's going to be, you know what I mean. And again, not to oversimplify that. That's a win.
Yeah, I think sometimes they are some key moments that we probably overlook, of how many decisions we have to make during a day, that as simple as some of those things, getting up, getting and having a shower and doing all those things, are a struggle sometimes for a lot of people, and you just don't want to do it.
Yep. And it's the small wins. And there is that sort of decision fatigue, where you just, and you don't recognize it. So you become so fatigued from decision making that your brain atrophies, and you just go, I can't make any decisions. I can't do anything. And you know what? Sometimes it might be okay and just not to do anything for a day. Go, not happening.
Yeah,
I remember.
Definitely recognizing those moments for sure.
Yeah. And not beat yourself up if it's not happening. I remember reading an article on Tom Waits, and I bring it back to music, and he would go down to his shed at the bottom of his garden, and he had the wherewithal to go, music is not happening today. I'm walking away. Music will be there for me tomorrow. And if it doesn't work tomorrow, it'll be there for me the next day and the next day. I'll keep up. I'll keep getting up. I'll walk to the bottom of my garden. And if it happens, it happens, and I'll rejoice in that. And if it doesn't happen, I'm not going to beat myself up about it. So I guess shifting that method of what it is you're actually, why are you actually doing this?
And just to finish on, there's so many genres of music. People use music as a release, so it's ironic that you were involved in music that caused, potentially part of your struggle, right? Do you still find now you use music as an outlet when you are at a tough time, or do you try and distance yourself from something like music where that triggers a thought?
So I never distance myself from music, because music is my life. I engage in music on a daily basis. So that's that's just that. But what I do, the struggle that I still have is not being completely disabled mentally to make a decision, because I still put a lot of pressure on myself.
Yeah.
Even though I've told you how I think I've got this great toolkit, I can tell you right now, I'm having a major existential crisis about the next record that I'm making. And so what?
Yeah.
It's only a record, you know. But
Mm.
I'm really, really sort of trying to work hard on not beating myself up about it and going down similar paths that I would have done before. And that's on the back of me telling you that I've got this toolkit of 20 years of CBT and 20 years more of experience. I might add that I can shut those negative thoughts down a lot quicker now, but they're there, you know, they're still there. So I'm not sure whether that answered your question or not. It's just a constant. It's just constant. And it's okay.
Well, it's good to know that something that brings you so much joy has given you so much pain, yet can bring you so much joy again. And I can, let me finish on Mark. I speak for a lot of people that tune into this show that they call themselves your friends. I'm lucky enough to call you a friend now. You are an amazing musician, Mark. I know I'm not here just to pump your tires up on the back of this conversation flippantly, but
it's not the fun.
For me, that album, you know, your latest album was one of those real moment albums for me. I thank my mate Mark Burke, who put me onto, you got to come and see this guy, Mark Sinton. I said, oh, great, another Mark. Let's find out if this one's a good guy. But anyway, it's been an interesting ride, a great journey. One of our friends that comes on this show really sums it up in this conversation. This is so good. Having your toolkit in order is absolutely the way to go. Mark, there's nothing ordinary about your struggles. They were and are as genuine as all of ours. And that was the point of this conversation, honestly, to normalize this conversation. Like you said, that you are no different to any of us. We, I suppose, somewhat put you on a pedestal in respect of when you're up playing music and we see an amazing talent.
That's the gig,
and then you've mentioned to me, you sit back and say, mate, I don't know how you'd even do that podcast, the work you put in and the conversations. And I must thank your cousin, Peter Baxter, who put an amazing comment about the work effort he thought I put into the chat that we had with him a couple of weeks ago. That really rings true to, you know, there's so many journeys and people's that make up different people. And I'd just like to acknowledge that we are all work in progress. We do need to talk more. This is the point of why we put this chat on, to have these conversations. We could talk for easily another hour in relation to struggles, wins, and, you know, learnings for the day. But let's do that another time, Mark. You've been very generous with your time on a Tuesday night.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. It's really important, Darren, and I really applaud you and the team for doing this. And I think that and I chatted to you offline about how I listen to other podcasts that frame mental health in a sort of surreptitiously. You know, it doesn't become a deep, difficult listen or read. And I have no doubt that you and the team will do things like this and have it, you know, hopefully really accessible to people. And I would encourage you to please keep doing this and, you know, get people on and let's just talk.
Yep. Great words, Mark. Thanks for sharing your story on episode 155 of what's been happening. We look forward to seeing you out there soon. There's a couple of shows you've got coming up, which we just want to say a quick mention to. This one here at the Merry Creek Tavern is in a week or so's time, not far along. That'll be a cool little gig. Make sure you get along to that one. And this one I want to touch on as well. This Beatles gig. Yeah, just tell us a little bit about this one, Mark, because I think it's a really cool and interesting story. How'd this one come about?
Oh, yeah, okay. So I'll try to tell this as quickly as possible. It's called Macca for Calf, and it does tie into the Merry Creek Tavern, I might add. The last time I played the Merry Creek Tavern, it was a super spreader. I don't know. Yeah, like, you know what that place is like. There was 55, 60 people in there, and 3/4 of my band got COVID, and most people got COVID. My next door neighbor got COVID, and she's a massive Beatles and McCartney fan. And as you know, in October last year, Mecca came out. I got COVID, but I just managed a day out to get clear to be able to go to it. Kath texts me and goes, "Are you at Mecca?" I said, yes, I am. She says, I'm not. I'm 1 day behind. Please, can you do a local show? We've got a really cool bar around the corner called the Mary Bar. There are other bars available, ladies and gentlemen, but that one's pretty cool. I thought, well, I can do better than that. She just wanted me to sing a few songs, and I just hooked up with a few Beatles nerds that I knew. So I got Mr. Farnan on board, who is easily the best musician I've ever played with in my life, and I've played with a hell of a lot of musicians. The guy's a genius. Matty Cotter, I just had to give him 2 beers and he was on, and Dan Rolfe and Richie from my band, and we did it. And it was just, we expected 30 or 40 people, and it was 200 people in this tiny little bar.
Wow.
And people said, you've got to do it again. So we're doing it at George Lane. It's a lot of fun. But no, yeah. So I think we'll do it now and again. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Great. Fantastic. All right. So marksintonmusic.com is where you're jumping on to check out all the latest and greatest for Mark Sinton. Please get out there and check out some of his music. Come along to one of the shows. Come and meet us and say good day and tell us you watch this podcast. Most importantly, tell your friends about this podcast. You never know who's listening or who should listen. Please share it around and tell a few more people about normalizing the conversations in relation to mental health. So thanks again for joining us, Mark. Have a great week, most importantly, and I'll see you at a gig very soon.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Well, that was great chat with Mark Sinton. Normalizing mental health is kind of what we're trying to do. Normalize the conversation about mental health, not call mental health such a mental health struggle. Not everything is a struggle. We don't want it to be, but we understand and acknowledge that people are struggling, like we all are. We all are a work in progress. And don't compare yourself, most importantly. Don't compare yourself to someone else and their journey or their assessment or their path of what you believe is their success. You never know what their real goals are in the end. So what I want to do is just put up and acknowledge the list of incredible people and artists that we've had on this show so far. We are well and truly past show 100 now, tipped over show 150 and rapidly expanding into show 200. So look forward to chatting to you all soon. See you out there in the big world. Most importantly, get along to a gig. These artists, these bars, these people in amongst venues need you. Get out there early and have a chat. We'll see you soon.